What's up everyone? Alex here. I have a confession to make. I never actually played through the original Super Mario RPG. Super Mario RPG came out at a time of huge transition for me, where I found myself leaving my friends and moving to the United States. This transition also marked a time when I doubled down and became a PlayStation fan, leaving the SNES in the dust and anticipating the much-hyped release of Final Fantasy VII a year later. And while I could have potentially played it through its many re-releases over the years, I wouldn't have been able to give you an honest review of the Super Mario RPG Remake today. And let me tell you something. Even though I never played through it on the SNES, I could clearly see that much of the original game's charm is still baked into it, along with a few other additions that make the game even more approachable for new fans of the genre. But first, the story. As you can imagine, Mario's out to defeat Bowser to save Princess Peach. A typical Mario story, you'd say. But alas, things quickly go awry and everyone is sent flying in different directions, and a gigantic, mean-looking sword pierces through the heart of Bowser's castle, taking up residence. It's through that setup that Mario will still have to rescue Princess Peach, presumably somewhere in the neighboring lands, with the hopes of bringing peace back to the Mushroom Kingdom. If by hearing that you immediately think that a deep lore-laden narrative is absent from Super Mario RPG, you'd be correct. But given the context of the game and the general trajectory of the series since this game's original release, I'm quite impressed that its storytelling has stayed quite consistent with the Mario narratives of both new and old titles. Does that mean that Super Mario RPG doesn't have a good, entertaining story? Not in the slightest. In fact, Super Mario RPG's lighthearted and easy-to-understand tales have some interesting designs necessitated by its overworld layout. Similar to other SNES Mario titles, Super Mario RPG's world is laid out in an arranged circular formation, with Mario advancing clockwise from the top and moving from one land to the next in sequential order. Each land has its own unique quirks and stories, and Mario and company typically have to assist with what's ailing its citizens before continuing their adventures. But what's different about Super Mario RPG, aside from each land's uniquely crafted narrative, is its ability to infuse those areas with mini-games that add a touch of whimsy and fun to the unfolding events. And while it's tempting to say that all Super Mario RPG does new compared to other JRPGs is to add a ton of mini-games in the main story, the difference here is that these events add to the narrative. Not in a huge way, like making the story deviate from its foregone conclusion, mind you, but one that provides a worthwhile distraction and variety from the typical JRPG gameplay loop. And whenever I encountered these mini-games during the main story, it was always seen as a pleasant surprise. I've often been told that Super Mario RPG was the game that popularized QTE-style button presses during combat, and the remake actually adds pop-up prompts that help you with proper timing. This was no doubt added to help newbies like me figure out the timing of whatever action is being executed. After a certain amount of consecutive successful button presses, these prompts will disappear, acknowledging that you probably didn't need all that help to begin with. But should you miss, these prompts will come back. Every attack and block has specific timings you'll need to pay attention to, and special attacks have even more elaborate timings and presses that either require you to repeatedly press a button, by either mashing or timing it properly, or hold a button down to a certain point. But perhaps the biggest surprise for me is Super Mario RPG's choice to map out commands to a specific button, similar to Persona 5. This was also present in the original game, and by mapping specific commands to each button, it tricks our brain into thinking that we're not playing a menu-based game. In fact, much of Super Mario RPG's original combat design has everything to do with trying to invoke as much of the other game's action gameplay, while still staying rooted to turn-based combat. Apart from the new pop-up prompts, Super Mario RPG also has a brand new action gauge that fills up every time you properly hit QTEs. When filled up, you'll be able to call upon Toad to give you a random item to use. Later in the game, if all 3 of your active party members are alive, you can unleash a unique party attack that inflicts massive damage to your foes. Additionally, the more consecutive QTEs you hit, the more buffs you'll activate, adding a lot more incentive to nailing these timings. You're also now able to switch characters between active and reserve party members during combat. And if, for some reason, the game is still too difficult, there is an option to start with a breezy difficulty, which drops enemy HP lower and makes your party members level up faster. To counterbalance these changes, Super Mario RPG introduces special versions of enemies that are beefier and hit a ton harder. This makes it so that things like QTEs and proper defense becomes a lot more crucial. These enemies are often paired with easier enemies and should not be underestimated. Apart from that, Super Mario RPG also features tons of post-game enemies that will challenge seasoned veterans of the game. Outside of combat, since each item has a low cap, any excess items you've collected will go directly into a chest found at Mario's house, which you can use to replenish your stock at any time. This is all to say that while these quality of life features may seem as though the game is made easier, in reality, with the addition of special enemies and post-game challenges, Super Mario RPG has retained much of the original's challenge without sacrificing anything. By adding more incentive to nailing these QTE button presses, therefore building up an action gauge meter to deal even more powerful attacks, the dev's choice to make more powerful versions of enemies can turn the tide of battle if one was to underestimate them. And granted, it's not any harder than any modern JRPG, punishing experience isn't exactly the goal of the Mario series design. Leaving gameplay behind, what really made me happy with Super Mario RPG is how Arte Piazza translated its original pre-rendered sprites to full 3D in the remake. And while I've seen and appreciated the artwork made for the SNES version, the smoothness in animation and the clarity and crispness of its visuals really make the remake's look stand out, and helps match its look alongside other contemporary Mario titles. Again, I'm not knocking on the original's look. All I'm saying is that they're both admirable in very different ways. And the rearranged soundtrack by Yoko Shimomura, right down to her rendition of various Mario themes, is something you just have to listen to, as it's every bit as charming and evocative as any work she's ever done. When I think about the entirety of my experience with Super Mario RPG, I am super pleased to say that it was worth the wait to play this game in this form. While I can't say for certain that veterans who have had their fill with the original will have a better time with this one, what I can say with certainty is that Super Mario RPG is absolutely the perfect JRPG for anyone wanting to dip their toes in the genre. And for anyone just wanting another excuse to play through the game, Super Mario RPG has enough additions that will test everything you know of its combat and systems. And perhaps best of all, it's a worthy Mario adventure that will make you want to see these characters return in some form. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to see Booster as a villain in a future Mario title?